Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and in today's video I have the Game Week 2 stats breakdown. So this is a weekly series where we take a look at a whole bunch of statistics that will be relevant to help us make our decisions for Game Week 2. I've packed a lot of it into today's video and hopefully you guys find it useful in making your own data-driven decisions as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and if you do, please drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. This video takes quite a bit of time to put together, so if you really do enjoy it, I really appreciate if you drop a like and also subscribe. So we'll start today in this first graphic here with the top 10 transfer combinations. Now these are based on all Game Week 2 transfers that have been confirmed. So all Game Week 2 transfers that have been made so far, they've Fantasy Football Fix basically have taken an analysis tool and basically churned out the most popular transfer combinations, and these are presented here in front of us. So Kwanzaa, I think we see his name appearing so many times, and I think there is good reason why this is a trend, because at 4.5 million, as of recording, he's already dropped to 4.4, so hopefully those of you who want to ship him out have already done so, or if you haven't, that's perfectly fine as well. If you have a ready-made replacement, you can very well just bench Kwanzaa, but he has already dropped 0.1 million in price, and there is good reason for people to ship him out because he was hooked at halftime, due to tactical reasons. So that is quite a red flag, and a lot of people have decided that they moved him on. I do agree with that move as well, and the top replacement, as we can see here, that people have gone for is Anthony Robinson from Fulham. So 14.3% of this particular transfer combination has happened, and that is the highest out of all the other transfers. So I think it's no surprise because Robinson himself has loads of good fixtures coming up. It's really good fixtures, and the next two are against promoted sides as well. And thereafter, we know that Anthony Robinson does possess a lot of attacking threat, so I think that's what a lot of FPL managers are going for, and I do agree with this transfer. Now the next one is Mazraoui at 7.4%. Now this one kind of came in quite interesting to me because I did not think that a lot of people would go for Mazraoui, like only one game from him so far. Maybe the expectation is that he will continue to start, which I do think so. But when Luke Shaw comes back, what happens to the fullback positions? Like, does Darlow go back to right back? Does Mazraoui continue to start? So I guess for a short-term transfer, that does make sense. And for those of you who kind of only want him for the next few game weeks before you wildcard, I guess that could work. He did get into quite advanced positions here and there. Defensively, he looks very solid as well, and average positions wise, he also ventures a little bit forward. Maybe his attacking threat is not as great as someone like Robinson, but I do see the appeal from Mazraoui. I just did not expect that people would go there. 7.4% of the combination, so the second highest would be this combination. Now the next one is Rico Lewis, 3.8% of all transfer combinations, and I think for this particular transfer, it looks to me like a very short-term kind of a punt because Rico Lewis eventually will lose his place to Kyle Walker. I mean, we know that Pep loves Kyle Walker. There's a bit of transfer rumors going on still about whether Walker may leave the Premier League or leave Man City before the transfer window closes, but at least for the short term, Rico Lewis does seem like he will get a couple of starts. And the next one is against Ipswich, so I think people are going for the punt here, and he is quite advanced. He has a license to roam up front, so I do understand this one. For the Konza move, I think these are likely people who don't really have to use a transfer because Konza is playing Arsenal this week, but maybe you guys want to prepare for the next few game weeks after the Arsenal fixture for Konza, and he does look pretty nailed in that Aston Villa side, so I do understand this transfer as a long-term move. Now, won't go through all the other transfers, but I see Barco there as well. He is also being heavily linked to Sevilla, and that has come to light recently, so if you guys have him on your bench, you could very well just move him out if you have the extra 0.5, like Mazraoui here. Barco to Mazraoui is one of the more 0.9, that is one of the more popular transfers made. But I think it's perfectly fine to just leave Barco on the bench for now and see what happens. I don't think selling a 4.0 million defender, unless you have to start him, is that urgent of a transfer. But if not, I think this is generally the kind of transfers that we're looking at. We're looking at a lot of defensive transfers here, and that does make sense as well, because I don't think there's enough kind of information from all the midfielders or these forwards to kind of transfer them out right now. We need to give them, we will probably have picked solid picks, and we need to give them a bit of time, maybe at least one more game week before we start shipping out. I imagine that this graphic here will start to change next week, where we will see some midfielders and forwards being shipped out quite a bit. So for this week, heavily down to the defenders. If you have Kwanzaa, ship him out to Robinson. That is my kind of favorite transfer as well. So next up, another section in this part of the series will be trying to identify players that are likely to score or due to score because they've accumulated a lot of XG, and usually how it works is that the actual goals that you score would tend towards your expected goals. In other words, if you are expected to score, say for example Bruno Fernandes here, 1.2 goals, he will start to make up those goals very soon, and that's what we are trying to identify here, players who will score soon. So Bruno Fernandes, you would remember in game week 1, was playing kind of a false 9 position, and he got so many big chances. He actually kind of got, I think, 3 clear-cut chances and he missed, to the point where he even posted on social media apologizing to Fantasy Football Manager. So that one was quite funny. But I think you see here that he's highest on this chart because he had the highest expected goals, 1.2 that he accumulated, and yet did not put the ball into the back of the net. So very unlucky for Bruno Fernandes owners, but I do feel like a goal would be coming for him. I mean, I look at the way that he's playing. The only concern here is the role that he's going to play. I don't think he'll play the false 9 anymore, but I think to me that's really not too much of a concern actually. That is a good thing because I think he's better playing off a number 9, maybe someone like Xerxes. So I think if Xerxes starts and Bruno Fernandes plays in behind him, I think that is where we see him in his best role, and he could definitely pick up some goals there to match his expected goals. So I do think like he is someone that will score soon. Now Souček is someone that also accumulated a lot of XG over the game week 1 game against Aston Villa. He had so many clear-cut chances and even missed a real sitter as well. So 1.1 XG for him, and do bear in mind he's 5 million as well. So maybe just a caveat, this is only based on 1 game week of data, so we do have to take it with a pinch of salt, especially when you look at some of the other picks here as well. Someone like Jackson, for example, like I'm not asking you guys to buy him, I'm saying that potentially when they accumulate a lot of XG, they are getting the chances and they could score very soon. Right, so with Souček here, I don't think we need to move for him, but it is more that at 5 million, he could be an interesting option if he continues to be very attacking that we saw in previous, I think 2 seasons ago, when Souček really kind of tore up the FPL scene at a super cheap price point and getting double-digit hauls every other week. For those of you who kind of were playing 2 seasons ago, you would remember. So Souček 1.1 XG, he should be scoring soon if he continues to keep up this level of performance and converts the XG he gets. Same for Armstrong as well. He actually got a lot of good chances against Newcastle, but to be fair, that was against 10 men. Newcastle were down to 10 men because the red card to Fabian Schär came sometime in the first half. So majority of the game, Armstrong was able to get quite a number of XG throughout the game, 0.7, but did not score. So you would expect that, I think Southampton looked like a pretty decent side if you ask me, in terms of attacking sense as well. And Armstrong is on penalties, so I do see that coming. Garnacho at 6.5 million missed an absolute sitter. That is where the bulk of the 0.7 XG that he accumulated comes from. But yeah, I think moving forward he will start games. I don't think Amad Diallo keeps him out of the squad long enough. So I see Garnacho starting, and I think with the fixtures that they have, he also seems like someone that will be scoring sooner rather than later. Now for the other picks as well, there's Jackson. I think the big chunk of the XG actually came from a very clear-cut chance that he had, and Edison saved it at point blank. But I also do have the fear with Jackson that soon, potentially, there's so many combinations of attackers that Chelsea have that maybe Nkunku could even play up front. now that they've also signed João Felix as well. So I mean, there's loads of combinations here. Jackson is by no means nailed, but he did pick up quite a bit of XG in the first game. Same for Ayew, Diaz, Tavernier as well. So just to speak about Eze owners were also very unlucky here. So 0.4 XG that was accumulated for Eze, and in fact he had 7 shots, 3 on target. And honestly, when you watch the game, you would think that he should have scored a lot more as well. He was the main attacker for Crystal Palace, and he was looking sharp as always. So I think, with looking at all this data, even players like Fernandes or Eze, I think it is wise to just be patient with them and let them continue to get the chances and then score those goals. Because looking at the way that they performed in game week 1, I foresee them scoring very, very soon. So there we go with all the players on the screen. These are players that I predict are due to score soon if they continue to pick up the number of chances and XG that they are getting last game week. So next up, we're going to look at players due to assist, and I think it's no surprise that Trent is the one who accumulated the highest XA in the first game week. I mean, he looked really, really good, created loads of good chances as well. So in fact, he accumulated 1.0 XA, and that is even double the next player. So he is by far the most, I guess, creative asset in game week 1. Really, really good asset. And I think looking at the fixtures that Liverpool have as well, I do feel like with clean sheets and the attacking threat that he possesses, he feels like someone that you really need to have. You probably can't move for him now in game week 1 because he's 7 million. I don't imagine that people would have money lying around in their bank to go from a 6 million defender, for example, to Trent. But I do think, like, at least considering when you wildcard, you may want to bring him in sooner rather than later as well. Other notable mentions here: Casemiro created loads of chances for Bruno Fernandes, you remember, in the first game. So that's how he accumulated 0.5 XA. For Kudus as well, he looked really, really good. I mean, on the ball, he has so much flair in a player like him. And I think XA of 0.5 is no surprise to me. I think he will continue to be someone that passes the eye test a lot, and in game week 1 he got the data to back it up as well, right? So Mbeumo also 0.4. I think Mbeumo just presents as a very, very good 7 million option if Ivan Toney does leave, and it does look like it could be likely. So Mbeumo, I think soon people will want to move for him, and he in fact got a goal as well in game week 1. So I see a trend in Mbeumo coming soon. For the other kind of notable players, I would say is Porro at 0.3. He looked very, very sharp. Got a goal as well and created 0.3 of XA. I just do think, like, when I look at Porro, the way that he came off the game, because he's currently yellow flagged in the game, he came off with a bit of an ankle injury. I mean, it could be a bit of a extension. I'm no expert in ankle injuries here, but he did not look very comfortable. So we need to kind of see what Ange Postecoglou gives us. And thankfully, Ange is one of the more honest and open managers when it comes to press conferences. So we'll hope to get an update on Porro there. But he also looks very creative, very attacking. So I do like that. 5.5 million as well. I like the price point that he's at. But I do think that with the fixtures coming up, it could be quite tricky for him to continue to get clean sheets. So maybe it could be worth it to ship him out if he's only relying on attacking returns. But we will have to see what Ange says. For De Bruyne, no surprise that he's also on this list. He is definitely someone that I foresee returning with an assist soon, and he also created 0.3 XA last game week as well. So all these players, very, very soon, I do imagine that they will pick up some assists. So next up, we have the clean sheet odds for game week 2 here. So this is courtesy of 11fi.com. So thank you for the data. Do check out the website. There's all free data here, whether it's clean sheet odds, predicted goals, win percentages, etc. So do check him out. And clean sheet odds basically for this week, we see that by far and away, Man City are the ones that have the highest clean sheet percentage there at 54%, and followed very closely actually with 35% for Arsenal. And to be frank, I mean, looking at the 35% for Arsenal, who is the next highest, they are actually playing against Aston Villa, and that is by no means an easy fixture, but for them to still be at 35%, it kind of shows you how much the bookies or the market rates the Arsenal defense. And so I guess it comes a question, right? For those of you guys who, say for example, have Gabriel and Anthony Robinson. I've seen a couple of drafts that have Robinson on the bench. You maybe have Porro as well. And then you also have, say, a Trent. So you want to start Trent. If Porro's fit, you want to start Porro as well. And then it comes down to, let's say, your Arsenal defender, whether it's Gabriel or Saliba, right? Or your bench option, Anthony Robinson. Which one do you start? So when it comes down to this, I like to look at the odds. So Arsenal 35% here, Fulham 34%. So it's very, very similar. That's why I think now it will boil down to attacking threat for me, and therefore if I have Anthony Robinson, I think he has much better attacking threat than someone like a Gabriel or Saliba, who really only just relies on those bullet hitters, right? By no means are they bad assets. I think attackingly they are the best kind of centre backs to go for, but the bullet hitters don't come every week. So I think, you know, with it coming maybe 3 to 4 times every season, or 3 to 4 times in 38 games, I think you can take those odds on and you can go for, you know, Anthony Robinson with a 34% chance of a clean sheet and also slightly better attacking threat as well. So that's how I would use these clean sheet odds to make decisions. So in general, and I think trends wise, the good defenses would still get the highest clean sheet odds there. I think just something interesting to note as well is that Brighton are likely the ones with a higher clean sheet percentage instead of Manchester United there. So 22% for Brighton, and Man United only have a 17% chance of keeping a clean sheet against Brighton. So for those of you guys moving from Mazraoui, and he has Brighton here in game week 2, and then game week 3 they have Liverpool, which is also not a fixture that's easy to keep a clean sheet in. Maybe you could delay the Mazraoui move looking at these odds. So that's kind of how I kind of use these odds to analyze the transfers that I want to make, or also who to start and bench. Hopefully this section is relevant for those of you guys who are in those spots. So take a look at all the numbers here where relevant. Feel free to pause the video as well. But if not, you can check out 11fi.com for all these stats as well. So finally, for the last section of this video, we will be talking about captaincy. Now, I have 2 graphics prepared. Now, that's only specific to this game week because after this captaincy algorithm graphic, we will be talking about the triple captainship. So that's only specific for this video. But in general, every week, we will take a look at the captaincy algorithm. And just to give a bit of context onto how it works, the algorithm points that you see here for all these 3 players that are mentioned is a weighted average value of predicted points from 3 different sources. So the way that I do it is I look at the 3 different sources, I take all the points that they have predicted for all the players in FPL, and I pick out the top 3 after weighting them. I give a different weightage to kind of account for a bit of the differences in reliability of the sources, and thereafter I come up with the algorithm points for each of these players, and I recommend the top 3. So Haaland here is at 8.8 algorithm points. I think that is, you know, really high compared to Salah, who's at 7.9. Just to give a bit of context as well, last week the captaincy algorithm rated Salah as 7.4 and Isak was rated second at 7. So Salah came up top, and that was a success because he got 14 points. But you see the difference there, last week was only 0.4. For this week, the captaincy algorithm points difference between Haaland and Salah is so great, at 8.8 for Haaland and Salah is at 7.9. So I think both of them are great options, but I think Haaland is definitely the one that I would go for if I had both. And now I think it also poses a question, right, whether we want to triple captain or not. So just before we move on to the next section on that, this will be a weekly series where every week I will come up with the captaincy algorithm. So for those of you, especially in game weeks where it is slightly trickier and you want to rely on maybe a bit of data as well, this will be here for you. So we will be tracking the success of this. It's already 1 out of 1 game week success because last week Salah got 14 points there. So good one for the algorithm, and it's a good start for the algorithm, and hopefully it keeps up this performance. So the game week 2 recommendation from the algorithm is for Haaland to be the captain. I think you don't really need an algorithm to tell you that that is the best captain, but I think let's now take a look at whether it is relevant to decide whether to captain a triple captain Haaland or not. So now considering whether we should triple captain Haaland or not, before we jump into the reasons we should and shouldn't do it, I do want to give credit to Ben Crellin first, because a lot of the data as well as the points that we will have for this graphic here has come about because of the great work by Ben Crellin. Those of you who are new to FPL, Ben Crellin is a fixture guru. He is someone that kind of predicts future blanks and doubles, and that will be very relevant come the later part of the season. But make sure you drop him a follow so that you don't miss out on any information that he kind of tweets out. But yeah, credits to Ben Crellin for this. So I'll start with a couple of reasons that we should use the triple captainship or not. And to be frank, I myself, I'm at least maybe 60% likely to do it. So I'm leaning towards using it. I will talk more about why I personally want to do it in tomorrow's team selection video, but these reasons also come into consideration when I'm thinking why I want to use it. So the first thing is that Haaland is fit and guaranteed to start. So why this is even a point is because later on in the season, there will be Champions League games, there's FA Cups, there's EFL Cups, lots of games to be played. Haaland may be rested in some games. Say, for example, you want to wait for Haaland to play Southampton at home. If there's a fixture crunch during that period, then he is not guaranteed to start. He maybe only gets 50 to 60 minutes and then he gets taken off. So given that he's playing Ipswich now, there's no real kind of midweek games for him to contend with, whether it's Champions League or EFL Cups or FA Cups. So I think he plays 90 minutes, to be fair. I think even if they're winning by a huge margin, Alvarez is not even in the City squad to kind of come on for him. So I think Haaland likely gets the full game at least, and he's fit now. I mean, if we wait later on in the season, there's always a risk that the player is injured during the fixture that you want to triple captain him. So fit and guaranteed to start is one of the kind of considerations here. Next up is the first home game for Man City. So this is relevant because I think when it comes to starting the season, usually the big teams want to send a message across, and thereafter, they would want to start the season off, with a strong win against, those promoted sides. So to give a bit of background as well, last season, Man City started the season with a 3-0 win against Burnley. So I think we see that, there is kind of some intention to start the season well, and even a statement 2-0 win against Chelsea away also sends a message. So I do think like playing their first home game, there will be some boost from the crowd as well. So against Ipswich, who conceded 57 goals in 46 games last season, to put it into context, they are the second best defense, I guess, when you compare it to Southampton and Leicester. But to concede that many goals in a 46 game season, I think they definitely play an attacking style of football that could leave them quite open at the back if they do take that approach. And I think McKenna has been quite open in saying that he wants to take it to the big teams and doesn't really want to sit back. That could change, and that is also one of the reasons that we shouldn't do it, which I'll touch on later on. But at least if they play the style that they have been playing, I do think like they will leave space in behind. We saw Salah kind of take advantage of that space a lot last week. So players like Doku, players like Foden, for example, could very well take advantage of that space and create chances for Haaland as well. So things to consider there as to why we should do it. Now, talking about the double game weeks here, and this is where the Ben Crellin graphic comes in quite importantly, there are lesser double game weeks this season. So the reason is simply because FA Cup now has a week on its own, so it does not have to contend with a week where Premier League games are going on. So because of that, there's lesser blanks, and therefore lesser blanks means lesser double game weeks. So just to give a bit of context and to refer to the graphic on the left as well, what we see here from Ben Crellin, and I quote, is that the game week 9 fixtures become blanks if either team reaches the EFL Cup final. And therefore, if they blank in 29, he says it's likely the fixtures move to 33. So that's why he's kind of grouped the 29 and the 33 fixtures together, separated by a bold black line. And then we look at the 34 and 36 fixtures. For 34 fixtures, he says that they become a blank if either team reaches the FA Cup semi-finals. So basically, if that does happen, the 34 blank becomes a double in game week 36. So those are the double game weeks that we likely have, and it's really only these 2 game weeks that we're looking at. And you have to think about whether you want to use other chips in that game week as well, because there's the bench boost chip, there's also the mystery chip that potentially could be useful in a double game week, and then there's a free hit as well, where you can argue that a free hit should be used in a blank game week, but we have seen in last season even that a double game week free hit could be very explosive and make up a lot of points as well. So I think it's important to consider that we have many chips to play, and maybe playing the triple captain chip now and getting rid of it, and to be frank, the triple captainship is the one with the lowest upside because it's pretty much a gamble. So playing it in a single game week now with all these kind of other factors considered, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, right? So the last thing I do want to say before we move on to the reasons why not to do it, it is a 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. So basically, it is the slightly earlier kickoff. It's not the earliest because I think Brighton and Manchester United are the earliest. But a 3 p.m. kickoff could mean that we get some information about whether KDB and Foden starts. And if they do start, I do think like they are the ones who create a lot of chances for Haaland, especially Kevin De Bruyne. And if that is the case, I would be very tempted to triple captain Haaland myself as well. Now, let's take a look at the reasons not to do it here. And this one, the first point is quite obvious, that you have an opportunity cost of not being able to use it in a double game week. Now, for this one, I think a lot of people tend to just cite the probability factor and just say that if you're playing 2 games, I would, use the triple captainship then. But I think it's also important to consider just now that you have many chips to play, and you could end up even saving it for later game weeks but still using it in a single game week. So I think this is, a point that should still be considered in totality, but there is an opportunity cost of not using it in a double game week. There is obviously less probability that the player does well, or Haaland does well in a single game week versus a double game week. Now, next up is that Ipswich could set up more defensively. So for this one, yes, I have mentioned that they play a more attacking style of football, but who knows, McKenna could set up more defensively to try and keep the damage low and keep the scoreline respectable. I mean, it is their second game in the Premier League after, many years that they haven't played in the Premier League. So they could want to keep the scoreline low and set up with maybe a back 5, for example, a slightly more defensive. It could still be a 3-5-2, for example, but they could drop the 2 wing backs further back just to provide more stability there. So I think Ipswich would potentially, kind of try to park the bus. It is a possibility. So that's one of the reasons not to do it. City also look quite rusty. I mean, I look at the way that they played against Chelsea. It wasn't super convincing. They did win 2-0, but there were signs that some of them still had a bit of fatigue or maybe pre-season kind of lethargy. So they did look a bit rusty, and some of the players, especially Phil Foden, you would see, didn't even start the game because he returned late. So I think we do have to kind of take that into consideration as well, and maybe City are not firing on all cylinders like they were at the start of last season. And then the last point, which is quite a big point as well, is that there's no Rodri. He's not back yet from injury. So I think that, usually when Rodri plays, there is a stat that has been going on where, City have not won a game without Rodri. They've, lost 3. They've drawn the other one. So basically, I do think like not having Rodri would provide less of stability in midfield. But at the end of the day, it is Ipswich. So how much control in the midfield would you lose even with the players that you are using to cover Rodri? Say, for example, Kovacic, Bernardo Silva. I think those 2 players are very well capable of keeping control of the midfield as well. So I could be talking myself into a triple captain for Haaland as well, but let me know. I've rattled on quite a bit, but let me know if you are considering the triple captainship for yourself as well in the comments down below. Unfortunately, this video has gone on quite long, so I appreciate if you watched to this point. I promise you that it will not be this long every week. But for this particular week, because we had the triple captain Haaland section, I did have to mention quite a bit of points in this part as well. I will again talk about triple captain in tomorrow's team selection video, but hopefully you enjoyed this one and you found it useful. If you did, I took quite a bit of time to put this one together, so please do drop a like, and please do subscribe as well if you want to follow this series every week. Loads of stats, loads of data that you will have available to you to make your own informed decisions, whether it's wanting to use it as a reference or just having it in mind. I think it is useful to look at the stats as well. So that's the whole idea of this series. If you have any feedback, drop it in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow for the team selection video.